Been a week since Nolan Wells' body was found on Horn Island. As the country sits and waits for the investigations to conclude, many questions are still left to be answered.
Stop. There were two conversations happening at the same time that afternoon, and almost nobody talks about the second one. The first is the one you have heard about. A teenager on a boat off Horn Island calls sea tow and says the bilge pump has stopped and they are sinking. The second is on the same recording. The dispatcher reaches a captain on a second line, and that captain is already speaking to the person the boat belongs to, and that owner, the recording establishes, is family to the boy on the other line. So help was being organized on two tracks at once. Then the dispatcher tried to bridge them, and the call appears to disconnect. This video takes both lines apart. Nobody has been charged. Police have not named a suspect. Let's go back to that first conversation, the one you have heard about, because the recording, released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources via WLOX, is not a clean single call. It is a window into a moment of chaos. It is around 4 p.m. on the 4th of July. A teenager on a boat off Horn Island is on the line with Sea Tow, a private marine towing company. His report is specific. The bilge pump has stopped. The boat is taking on water. They are sinking. That is the crisis. But listen to what happens next on that tape. The Sea Tow dispatcher is not just handling this one caller. There is a captain on another line. And that captain, according to the released audio, says something that changes the shape of the whole afternoon. He is mid-conversation with the vessel's owner when the dispatcher reaches him. And that owner, per the audio, is a relative of the teenager who made the call. So you have two lines of communication open at the same time. The teenager is calling for help. The owner is already talking to a Sea Tow captain. The dispatcher tries to connect them. She attempts to transfer the caller to the captain, and that is where the recording appears to break. The call disconnects. Now that is a fact. It is on the tape. But what does it mean? Sea Tow, for its part, says it did not end up towing the boat. That is their statement, via WLOX. So the call was made, the connection was attempted, and the service was not used. Here is where the timeline gets interesting. Because the call is placed around 4 p.m., but the state's own position record, held by CBS News, has the vessel away from the island by roughly 4:31. That is a 31-minute window between the distress call and the boat's departure. And that window sits right on top of another one. The document belongs to a volunteer group, and that group calls it unofficial itself, so the call for help happens inside that window. The boat leaves after it closes. Now, a retired FBI agent has weighed in on this specific piece of audio. Kieran Ramsey, a retired FBI agent, told Fox News that the released Sea Tow audio does not show anything nefarious. That is his assessment. He is looking at the same recording you and I are listening to, and he is saying it does not point to foul play. But here is the thing about that recording. It is a fragment. It is the piece of the afternoon that was captured and released. It does not include what the owner said to the captain on that other line. It does not include the conversation that was happening while the dispatcher tried to bridge the two calls. We hear the teenager's distress. We hear the captain's statement about the owner. And then the line goes quiet. So we are left with a question that the audio cannot answer. The call was made. The owner was already on the phone. The transfer was attempted. And then, nothing. The call fails. The boat is not towed. And the boat leaves the island at 4:31. That is the first account. That is the version of events that exists on the official recording. It is a story of a mechanical failure, a request for help, and a connection that did not hold. But it is only one account, and it leaves a gap of 64 minutes between the last verified sighting and the boat's departure. The second account is the one that fills that gap, and it does not come from a recording. It comes from the people who were on the boat. Those three young men are not named on the released recording. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has not named them publicly, and neither will we. In this case, they hold one specific status: witnesses. According to the Sheriff's Office, per WLOX on the 16th of July, investigators have interviewed more than 60 witnesses. The three friends who were on the boat are among them. 60+ interviews. That is a large number this early. And the FBI is involved, Sheriff John Ledbetter said, because the digital evidence crosses onto federal land. Horn Island is federal, so the people on that boat did not tell their story once and go home. They told it in a formal setting, with the record preserved. Now here is the part that matters. We have already walked through the autopsy findings, the GPS data, the CTO audio, but the account that fills that 64-minute gap comes from them. Per the volunteer report TMZ obtained, the confirmable band for his last sighting runs 3:23 to 4:27. The friends were on the boat with him the whole time. If that gap closes, it closes with their words. And what have they said? Here we have to be honest with you. Their full account has not been made public. You have not heard it. We have not heard it. What we know from the sheriff's office is that they were interviewed. What we know next, per WWL, the Grio, and ABC News, is that the friends from the trip have received death threats and online harassment. His lawyer put the demand in writing, per WWL, ABC News, and the Grio. Let that sit for a second. These are witnesses. And per Live Now from Fox, the FBI is investigating threats against the people who were with Nolan Wells in the hours before he vanished, and against officials working the case. Read the direction of that sentence carefully. The threats are the subject of that investigation, not the witnesses, the people threatening them. Mississippi officials, per Newsweek, have urged the public not to rush to conclusions. They warned that social media speculation could hinder the investigation itself. And per WellBT, Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell called a purported toxicology report circulating online fraudulent. A fake report, a fake piece of evidence, spreading as fact. Into that atmosphere, the family's legal team has moved. The preservation notice, per the Magnolia Tribune and MPB, asks recipients to hold on to boat maintenance records and fuel purchases. Maintenance records, fuel purchases? That is a request to preserve the paper trail of the boat itself. It is a procedural step. It is not an accusation, but it shows you where the family's attorneys are looking. And at the center of it all, no one has been charged. This is still an active file in 2 places, per NPR. The friends are witnesses. The boat's owner has not been named a suspect. The caller has not been named a suspect. No one has been charged. So the second account, the one that fills the gap, sits inside an active investigation. It is protected by lawyers and it is targeted by strangers. The people who know what happened in those 64 minutes are watching allegations go viral about them. And what has been said about those friends, the claims, the accusations, the online theories, has now become part of the record too. That is where we go next, because the words aimed at them are being investigated by the FBI as well. And that investigation is one of several points where this case collides with itself. Lay the times side by side, and they don't line up. They crash. The state's own tracking, obtained by CBS News, marks the departure at about 4:31. The call to CTO came around 4 p.m., per the Department of Marine Resources via WLOX, from a teenager on a boat at Horn Island. That's a 31-minute gap between the distress call and the departure. And the call is only the beginning. Now the first collision. Per the United Cajun Navy report, a volunteer organization's report, not an official finding, via TMZ. Nolan's last independently verified sighting fell between 3:23 and 4:27. That window is the tightest number in the timeline. The boat leaves at 4:31, 4 minutes after that window closes, 4 minutes between the last verified sighting and the boat leaving the island. Inside that window, the released audio from the Department of Marine Resources, via WLOX, captures the dispatcher speaking with a captain. The captain said he was already on the phone with the man who owned the boat. So the captain was already on the phone with the owner before the teenager's call came in. That owner is a relative of the teenager who called. So 2 calls are happening at once. The teenager calls CTO. The owner is already on the line with a CTO captain. The dispatcher tries to transfer the caller. Per the audio, the call appears to have disconnected. The transfer never happens. And per CTO, the company did not end up towing the boat. The boat left anyway. That's the second collision. The call says help. The GPS says departure. The gap is 4 minutes. Now the paperwork. Per the Magnolia Tribune and MPB, the family's attorneys sent a preservation notice asking for boat maintenance records and fuel purchases. That's the paper trail of the exact vessel that, per CBS News, left at 4:31. The legal request and the GPS point, land on the same object, the boat. Then the medical collision. Per WLOX, the official state autopsy was completed by July 31st, but its results have not been made public. They're going to a grand jury. Per ABC News and CNN, the independent autopsy returned undetermined pending investigation. So the official record is sealed, the independent record is undetermined. And into that silence, per COLBT, a purported toxicology report circulated online. Commissioner Sean Tindell called it fraudulent, a fake document, colliding with an undetermined finding. Then the witnesses. Per Live Now from Fox, the FBI is investigating threats against the people who were with Nolan Wells and against officials working the case. The threats are the crime. The witnesses are the targets. Per WWL, The Grio, and ABC News, those same friends have received death threats and online harassment. One friend's attorney has sent a cease and desist letter. The people who hold the account of those 64 minutes are being threatened by strangers. And that threatening is itself under investigation. Per the Jackson County Sheriff's Department via WLOX, more than 60 witnesses have been interviewed. The 3 friends on the boat have been interviewed. The account exists. It is in the record. It is not public. Line it up. Last verified sighting ends at 4:27. Boat leaves at 4:31. Distress call around 4 o'clock. Transfer fails. No tow comes. Autopsy says undetermined. Official results sealed. Fake report spreads. And the only people who can explain the 4 minutes between 4:27 and 4:31 are the friends on that boat. They've been interviewed. They've been threatened. Their words sit inside an investigation with no charges and no public findings. That is the collision at the center of this case. But there is one more collision. It involves the person who made that call. The caller was a teenager on the boat. The man already on the phone with Cito was the boat's owner, a relative of that teenager. Same boat, same time, 2 separate calls. When the dispatcher tried to connect them, the line went dead. That is the point where the timeline stops lining up, and it's the point we have to look at next. And here is where the record splits in two. On one side, the documents. On the other, the silence. Start with the lead investigator. Per the Jackson County Sheriff's Department via WLOX, Sheriff John Ledbetter says his office has interviewed more than 60 witnesses. 60. That is not a small number. That is a file thick with statements. And the FBI is assisting with digital evidence, he said, because Horn Island sits on federal land. So you have 2 agencies, 1 file, and a count of 60-plus people who have already talked. Now the timeline those witnesses sit inside. CBS News holds that departure log, the island astern by roughly 4:30. Per the United Cajun Navy report, via TMZ, the last independently verified sighting of Nolan Wells fell between 3:23 and 4:27. That report is not an official finding. It is a volunteer organization's work. But the numbers are what they are. The sighting window closes at 4:27. The boat leaves at 4:31. 4 minutes sit between them, unaccounted for. Here is what the official record does not contain. Per WLOX, the state finished its examination at the end of July. Its results have not been made public. They are going to a grand jury. So the state's finding exists, and you cannot see it. The privately commissioned report gives no cause and no manner, according to CNN. Not yet. Now weigh the official voices against the noise. Per Newsweek, Mississippi officials have urged the public not to rush to conclusions. They warned that social media speculation could hinder the investigation. And per WLBT, Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell said a purported toxicology report circulating online is fraudulent. A fake document floating through the same case where the real findings are sealed. Then there is the threat layer. Per Live Now from Fox, the FBI is investigating threats against the people who were with Nolan Wells and against officials working the case. Read that again. The threats are the crime under investigation. The witnesses are the targets of that crime. Per WWL, The Grio, and ABC News, those same friends have received death threats and online harassment. One friend's attorney has sent a cease and desist letter. So the people who gave statements to the sheriff are now being attacked by strangers who have decided what happened. Now bring in the expert voice. Per Fox News, retired FBI agent Kieran Ramsey looked at the released CTO audio and said it does not show anything nefarious. A former agent, reading the same recording the public is arguing about, and his read is, "Nothing sinister there." That is a weight on one side of the scale. So line up what the record independently supports. 60-plus witnesses interviewed. 3 friends on the boat interviewed. GPS shows a 4:31 departure. Last verified sighting closes at 4:27. State autopsy complete. Results sealed. Going to a grand jury. Independent autopsy. Undetermined. A former FBI agent says the audio is not nefarious. Officials say the fake report is fake, and the FBI is investigating threats against the witnesses, not the witnesses themselves. That is the sum of what is on the record. Now here is what is not. The GPS data has not been released to the public. The state autopsy has not been released. The witness statements have not been released. The digital evidence the FBI is examining has not been described. The grand jury has not been announced. No one has been charged. Work continues at the sheriff's office and at the bureau, according to CNN and NOLA. Calm, that is the sentence that keeps repeating. So the record supports a specific picture. A young man went to Horn Island. He was last verified seen between 3:23 and 4:27. The boat left at 4:31. The official findings are sealed. The independent findings are undetermined. The witnesses have been threatened. The threats are being investigated. And the only thing the public has heard is one distress call, one transfer that failed, and a towing company that never towed. That is the weight of the documents. And the silence on the other side is where the next question lives, because the record does not explain the 4 minutes between 4:27 and 4:31, but someone on that boat was watching the clock, and the call that went dead at the moment of transfer may be the closest thing we have to a witness. The family's attorneys are preserving the paper trail. Per Magnolia Tribune and MPB, the preservation notice asks recipients to keep 2 kinds of records: boat maintenance records and fuel purchases. That is the list. Maintenance, fuel, 2 things that tell you how a boat ran on the day it ran. The notice does not accuse anyone. A preservation notice is a procedural step. It keeps evidence from disappearing while the case moves. But it tells you where the case is looking. At the boat. And the boat sits on a legal crossroad. Per the Jackson County Sheriff's Department via WLOX, the FBI is assisting with digital evidence because Horn Island is on federal land. That is why 2 agencies are in this. Nolan Wells disappeared on federal ground, so the sheriff's office handles the people and the FBI handles the evidence the land produces. And while the agencies work, the officials are asking for patience. Per Newsweek, Mississippi officials have urged the public not to rush to conclusions, warning that social media speculation could hinder the investigation. That is a warning about the case itself, and it is a warning about the crowd watching it. The speculation has already produced a fraudulent toxicology report, per the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, via WLBT. Commissioner Sean Tyndall warned it is fake. A document the state says is fraudulent is being treated as evidence by people who were not there. So line up what is still open. The state autopsy is complete per SW, but its results have not been made public. They are heading to a grand jury. No date has been set. CBS News has seen the GPS data. You have not seen the full track. The witness statements have not been released. The digital evidence has not been described. The threats case is open. The preservation notice is in force, and no one has been charged. Per NOLA.com, CNN, and NPR, the case remains under investigation by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. That is the pending list. Every item on it belongs to the living. The grand jury will convene. The autopsy will be read. The GPS will be described. Those are decisions that will be made in rooms the public cannot see. But none of those decisions will change the date at the center of this case. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. According to CNN and WLOX, he disappeared during a boat trip to Horn Island on the 4th of July. His body was recovered on the 6th, 2 days. The last time anyone independently verified seeing him was between 3:23 and 4:27 that afternoon. A 64-minute window, per the United Cajun Navy report. A volunteer organization's work, and not an official finding. The boat left the island at 4:31, 4 minutes later, and then the verified record ends. There is something ordinary in that detail that is worth saying out loud, because the internet has been reading it the other way. A boat gets into trouble. The person on board calls for a tow. Meanwhile, the adult who owns the boat is already on the phone with the same company, sorting it out from shore. That is not two stories colliding. That is a family handling a problem the way families do. One person on the water, one person on land, both trying to get the same boat home. The dispatcher's attempt to bridge them and the call dropping before it connected is the kind of thing that happens on any bad phone line, on any bad day, anywhere. Nothing on that recording suggests otherwise, and the one outside expert who has publicly assessed it said the same. What it does tell you is that within minutes of the pump failing, more than one adult already knew that boat was in difficulty. That is a fact about how quickly the problem traveled. It is not a fact about anything else. Everything after that is sealed, or pending, or in the hands of a grand jury. And the people who were with Nolan, the three friends who gave statements, are still being threatened, and still being protected, and still waiting for the investigation to finish. But the person waiting the longest is not in the investigation at all. It is Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley. She has an independent autopsy that says undetermined. She has a state autopsy that says nothing yet. She has a preservation notice holding the boat's records in place. And she has a son who left for Horn Island on the 4th of July and came home on the 6th, in a way no mother should have to receive. The record is sealed. The grand jury is pending. The GPS is unreleased. But for her, this was never a case about a distress call. It was a case about her son, and the stretch between the last time anyone could confirm seeing him and the boat pulling away. Anywhere from 4 minutes to 68, depending where in that window the sighting fell. Nothing released so far narrows it, and nothing said online has either.